Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Ellison. I am VP of Sales for Virtual Graffiti, and we're here to introduce a newly signed vendor, Trustifi. They're a strategic partner going into 2020, and we have some cool information to share on this webinar. A little bit about VG. Founded in 2000, we're based in Irvine, California. We do have global locations, smaller branch offices that handle local customers in other regions. We have about 200 brands in different verticals servicing all different markets. And we definitely do a primary chunk of our business in the SMB and enterprise. It makes Trustifi a perfect fit. We are specialists in cyber network security, primarily firewalls and UTM devices, but that translates into business that we do on the cloud side, networking side, and storage side. A little over 180,000 customers worldwide. So the Trustifi partnership is new. Again, it's strategic for 2020. We have 30 salespeople here working closely with the Trustifi team to make sure that our customers are knowledgeable on email security and encryption. We've set up a dedicated site, simplemailprotection.com, where you can find more information about the product, demos, and links to contact our sales folks if you need additional information or pricing. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Zach Schwartz at Trustifi for a quick intro and demo.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the introduction, and everyone here is super excited about the partnership and upcoming success in 2020 with Virtual Graffiti. So just a little bit quick introduction on Trustifi. So Trustifi is a 3-year-old company. We're based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, and what we really focus on is email security, both on your inbound and outbound communication within the organization. For today's demo, what we really want to touch on is what's just come out recently, the California Consumer Protection Act, and how Trustifi can help with compliance around that. This is something that we're going to be working very closely with Virtual Graffiti to help with Virtual Graffiti's customers achieve that compliance. So what we want to talk about today is, first and foremost, what is CCPA, why it's important to consumers, and then how it's going to affect your business, whether you have a business within California or you're just doing business with consumers within California. We're also going to touch on what Trustifi protects in regards to personal information, and then how that information needs to be protected in order to be compliant with CCPA, and how Trustifi can help. So what is CCPA? CCPA is the first American Privacy Act issued by the state of California, and this went into effect January 1st, 2020. And this is going to be affecting anyone who has customers in California or is doing any sort of B2B work within California. And what we found is this is extremely similar to GDPR, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. In regards to what CCPA does is it enforces organizations to protect their customer data. So whether that be wherever that is stored, most likely virtually, and then puts fines around that in the event that that data is disseminated to a third party, either intentionally or unintentionally. So why is CCPA important? What it does is it does protect consumers. So what it states is that all data needs to be protected, both in transit and at rest, wherever it may be, for our customers. And it also states that in the event that a consumer wants to know where their data is being stored, the organization has to be able to supply that information. So, does CCPA affect your business? Any company must comply with regulations that does business in the state of California if they are operating for profit or they are collecting any sort of customer personal data. So we have the bullet points below of who it affects. So it's if you have revenues above 25 million, if you are possessing information of more than 50,000 consumers, households, or devices within California, or if you earn more than half of your revenue from selling to consumer personal information. And below we have what the fines are for if this if any of these records are disseminated. So here we see companies have 30 days to comply with laws once notified of the violation. And if the issue isn't resolved, then a fine can be up to $7,500 per record. So what that means is it only takes 133 records to be exposed, and we're already looking at over a $1 million fine. So this is something that is coming to effect and can have serious ramifications in the event that these are not followed. So what we look at is what sort of information is protected under CCPA. It can be something as simple as email addresses, online handles, IP information, biometric information, geolocation data, browsing and search history, as well as also some of the other things like personal health identifiable information, credit card info, social security. All of this type of information is protected under CCPA, and it's something that we need to think about when storing and sending and receiving this sort of info, especially via email. Now, how does Trustifi help you comply with CCPA? What Trustifi does is two different factors that we focus on. First is in regards to outbound protection on email. So with data loss prevention tools that we put in place, we ensure that any information or any data leaving the organization that is in relation to CCPA will automatically be encrypted, both in transit and at rest, to ensure that this data cannot be stolen from any sort of man-in-the-middle attacks or any hacking attempts on that data. On top of that, we also help with inbound protection in regards to email. So one of the things that we see all the time are things like spoofing attacks coming in, looking to steal data, pretending to be someone they're not, and then having employees respond back to those emails. What Trustifi does is acts as a secure email gateway to ensure that those emails never reach the inbox and users are protected at all times. What we're also doing is scanning those emails for any sort of viruses or ransomware, both links and attachments, to ensure that if an attacker tries to get onto the network, they cannot do that via email. So what we're going to do now is just go through a quick Trustifi demo to see what this looks like in real time. So you can see how easy it is to protect your users and be in compliance with the California Consumer Protection Act. So what we have here is just a normal Microsoft Outlook new email composition. Trustifi layers on top of Microsoft Outlook, Office 365, as well as G Suite. And it can be deployed in two different fashions. The first fashion is via the Trustifi plugin. So this is something that we can simply download from the Microsoft Outlook or G Suite store. And from here, we can quickly and easily send out a Trustifi encrypted email. So in the event that we were sending out some sort of encrypted email, or an email with any sort of CCPA information, we're sending out a social security number. What we can do is encrypt that content with a single click, and now what we've done is just protect that data while it goes in transit. Extremely easy to do. But what we're more interested in is the accidental dissemination of confidential information. So most likely when we're working with our users, they're not going to know exactly what needs to be protected and what doesn't. So if they were to send a simple email, send it to that same email address, and they were to send something like "looking forward to seeing you for lunch today," when they send that out, that's not going to be encrypted by Trustifi because there is no CCPA information in that email. So we'll let that pass through without going through any level of encryption. But if we were to send out that same email, and this time we'd add something like a credit card number, what's going to happen is this email is going to automatically be caught by Trustifi's CCPA filters, and it's going to be encrypted for us. So when we click send here, we'll take a look at what's going to happen on the recipient end of these emails. So first and foremost, we have the first email that came in, CCPA. So when we open up this email, we see what the user experience looks like. Because a lot of times when working with any sort of email encryption companies, it gets taken out fairly quickly because of what the user experience looks like, where you have to go through a forced registration, you have to go through multiple steps, download a new environment. But with Trustifi, we take that complicated encryption and make it extremely simple with single-click decryption. So if we see this right here, Zach Schwartz has sent us a secured message via Trustifi. All we do to open up that email is simply click on the email. It's now going to open up, and we can view that encrypted content. On top of this, when dealing with our consumers or dealing with our customers, what we also have the ability to do with Trustifi is give them access to respond back to us. So say in the event they were working with a vendor or anyone dealing with any sort of secure documents, we can request this social security number right here, and then they can respond back fully encrypted with an up to 1 gig file transfer size right here and reply back. So what we've just done is protected both what we're sending out as well as what we're receiving, which is something that no other email encryption companies are doing today. Now what we want to take a look at is those second 2 emails that we've sent. So these are ones where we're not actually knowing, is the email that we're sending out needing to be encrypted for CCPA, or is it something that can just pass through? So with this, we see this first email. This came into our Gmail account. It came in plain text, looking forward to seeing you today for lunch. But if we look at that second email that came in, we see even though that we didn't utilize the Trustifi plugin, this was automatically encrypted for us because it triggered one of the filters for CCPA for Trustifi. So for this example, we'll have to go through that same process, decrypt and open up the message before we can view the content. And only then can we see that credit card number. And if we want, again, reply here. So in this example, what we also want to take a look at is some of the tracking metrics that Trustifi has. So this credit card number that we sent out, what we're going to do now is open up the Trustifi plugin, and perhaps we sent this to the wrong person. So it was supposed to go to consumer or customer A when it was really supposed to go to consumer B. What we can do in real time is first see when that email was sent, delivered, opened, and read. But in the event that it was sent to the wrong person, we can now block this user in real time. So unlike Microsoft Outlook, where you would get a message saying that the email has been, that there's been a recall, with Trustifi, and the email still in your inbox, with Trustifi, when we go to open this up one more time, because now we realize that we have someone else's credit card number and we want to use it, when we try to open it up, we can see now this email is no longer available. So this is something that's extremely important with the accidental dissemination of consumer data. What we want to look at next is on the back end of Trustifi to see how we set this up. So if we go to the Trustifi admin panel here, we can see the rules and policies in order to set up a CCPA rule. The way this is set up is via a connector from Microsoft Exchange or via Microsoft Outlook or G Suite. And what we would do is sit in that in between. So anytime an email would come through the Exchange, what we can do is set up these rules here. So what we're interested in is compliance, CCPA. So what's going to happen is any single time an email is sent out from the Exchange with CCPA information in it, then we're going to take the following action. So for this, we want to encrypt that email. We might also want to add multi-factor authentication, where the user would be forced to open the email with a password or with an SMS PIN code or with a secondary email address. We also have the ability to decide if we only want attachments to be encrypted, as well as further tracking. We can CC or BCC another user. We can disable the email entirely, block the email, or just alert an admin. So these are all just if-then statements that we can create extremely easily within Trustifi. We can also create rule exceptions. So if this is anytime information with CCPA in it is sent out of the organization, we want to encrypt it, except if it is going to one of our internal email addresses. And I can add this rule right here. It only takes about a minute to set up. So everything within Trustifi, what we focus on is both ease of use on the recipients and senders of emails, but also on the IT admins in order to set these up in an extremely quick fashion. So now that we've discussed what our outbound traffic looks like and how we stop users from sending out information that they shouldn't be sending out because of these new compliance laws that have been put in place, What we want to look at next is what Trustifi does for inbound protection and how we stop users from clicking on things that they shouldn't and potentially bringing a threat onto the network where data can then be stolen and sold after the fact, once again, opening ourselves up for fines. With Trustifi, what we look at here is the Trustifi app, once again, to look at different types of emails coming into the organization. And we see here the threat detection on this email. This is safe. What we're showing is an analysis of what we are testing. So that would be the DKIM, the SPF, the DMARC, the ARC, the comp authenticity, as well as any links or attachments within the email. So here what we're going to do is pull up a real life example of an email that has come into the organization pretending to be our CEO. Hope you had a good weekend. Do you have PDF copies of your employees' W-2s? Will you please email them for a quick review? So if I did not have the Trustifi plugin, I would respond back to this email with my employees' W-2 forms. That could then be stolen, and depending on how many records I sent out, I just opened myself up for a $7,500 fine for every single one of those records. But thankfully, I do have the Trustifi inbound shield. So if I pull up the analysis, I see that this is a malicious email. The sender is not authorized to use this domain, and it appears to be spoofed. So this did not actually come from my CEO. Where this came from was a hacker trying to steal my data. And then I can open up the analysis and see exactly why we found out that this email was spoofed. On top of this, we're also checking for all of the links and attachments within an email. So in the event that, say, we received an email similar to this, where a link has been sent to us, it looks like it's coming from Microsoft. But once again, I'm going to open up the Trustifi app and see that this is actually a malicious link. This is not coming from Microsoft. And this could potentially download a virus onto my computer, which could then steal data and once again open ourselves up for fines. So having the Trustifi plugin is something that is extremely easy to use. We can disseminate between red and green if an email is safe or not safe. The only problem that we have with this is users sometimes tend to forget to open up the Trustifi plugin. And for that reason, we can display this data in all the other ways. So here we see an email that's come in, and here we've changed the headers on this. So Trustifi has found a potential threat in this email. You're advised not to open up the attachments. This is something that we can do here. On top of that, if we want to set this up, so an email comes in, we see that this email, the Trustifi shield, has found a potential threat in one of the emails that was recently sent to you, and the email was quarantined. So we can stop the email from ever reaching the end user's inbox and instead sending them an email like this, where they'll see that they received an email. For this reason, the link was malicious, but they can see when the email was sent, who it was delivered to, and then the reasons why. So all different ways that Trustifi utilizes protection, both on inbound and outbound communication to ensure that we are safe. One more time, we're going to go to the Trustifi admin panel and then see what these quarantine emails look like. So here's where, as a system admin, we will have full analysis onto everything that's happening in our organization. So we can see emails that are coming in, why they are suspicious or malicious. So we'll find a malicious email, or we can find a suspicious email, and then detect threats in it. So we can detect why was this email notified that there was a threat in it. So we can see all this here. Also within our environment, we can go to our mailbox management and see who are our users who are receiving the most threats from us. So here we have our top users who are receiving the most threats. So all things you can do within Trustifi, we make it so it is extremely easy to implement, as well as look at threats and set up. So that pretty much concludes the demo for today. So I'll pass it back over to Mike to see if
Thank you all for your time today on the webinar, and we'll be in contact with you if you are one of the gift card winners. Have a great day.